In this lesson, we'll cover electrical settings. So currently we're looking at a panel layout, basically part of electrical, within your Revit model. So where are the electrical settings for the electrical components in MEP, and what are those settings? So let's go to the Systems tab on your ribbon. In the electrical panel area of the ribbon, there's a drop-down arrow to the right. If you hover over that, you'll see the tooltip says Electrical Settings. Go ahead and click that drop-down arrow. This will display the electrical settings for components of electrical within MEP. First off, you have hidden line settings. This basically defines the hidden line size in your various gaps for the elements of electrical layouts. Next option down is General. These are some of the general layout classifications and phase lettering and numbering for the elements you create within electrical. Angles. This is where you can actually limit Revit to use certain angles or angle increments, or leave it open to use any angle when laying out an electrical system. Now below that are three sections for the different electrical types of elements to be created: wiring, cable tray, and conduit. Clicking on wiring first will display basic wiring information for wiring systems. Below that are wiring sizes. These sizes are grouped by material, then temperature, and then insulation type. And I see a variety of sizes listed by amps, along with their diameter and how they're actually used. You can add additional elements to this list or remove them if you want. You can also change the insulation type to view additional. Below that are connector factors, again by material and temperature, and also ground conductors, again by material, showing the amp and the conductor size. Below that are your wiring types, those two types that were originally defined in a previous screen. Voltage definitions are next. This is where you can set your voltage parameters, values for minimum and maximum. And lastly, in this group are distribution systems. This is where I can outline the phase configuration, wireage, and voltage settings. Below that are settings for our cable trays. Clicking on cable trays are basic settings for the cable tray outline itself. Rise drop will allow me to set a value for the rise drop annotation size. Single line symbology and two line symbology is where I can set the values for those symbols. And last element for cable tray settings are the size, where I can use the default sizes or add new sizes. Conduit settings is the next group, where I can look at basic settings for my conduit layouts, rise drop information and also symbol information for my conduit, and finally, conduit sizes, listing the size, inside-outside diameter, and the maximum band radius. The last two elements on electrical settings are load calculations and panel schedules. For load calculations, I can click the load calculation button, and it's going to list the different types of load classifications and the factors and settings that are set for each. If I click demand factors, I have the demand factor settings for each of the types listed on the left. And the last option is panel schedules. This is where I'm defining specific settings and values for my panel schedules. Go ahead and click OK. Now we just looked at the electrical settings. Now again, those electrical settings were all displaying the electrical elements and values that will be used within the electrical layout. Depending upon your template and your project, they're either listed as metric or imperial units, feet and inches. So as a review, in this lesson, we looked at electrical settings. We looked at viewing the electrical settings from the System tab in the electrical panel, and then we walked through all the different types of electrical settings, starting just with the general settings, looking at wiring settings, cable tray settings, and conduit settings.